Yeah.
Welcome back. You're watching Standpoint here on Morning Prime, and we continue our pace with the conversation on what now is bedeviling the country with the movement of the cult in Shakahola. And we have also different opinions there and editorials regarding how we should regulate, these faith groups, regulate groups or faith groups to curb horrific culture that is in the Daily Nation today. Also, a very interesting piece that has been written by Kaltum Guyo. We should regulate and monitor pastors to end crime, cult deaths. Just to read a snippet of what they're saying, an excerpt there, that should we, as Kenyans warriors, State House is turned into a church and welcomes all creeds of pastors. I believe we should. There's no suggestion of criminality going on at State House on the Hill. However, given the rise in organized crime within the churches and the inducement of government officials by people portraying themselves as church ministers, there is a need to review the close relationship between Kenyan state and the church. I want just also to hark back to where it says that of concern, or in the latest Al Jazeera document on the gold mafia of Africa, Kamlesh Patni was unsurprisingly featured. This is a man who is responsible for one of the biggest scams in the country, known as Goldenberg. He now masquerades as a pastor too. His accomplice in the latest round of gold and money laundering is another pastor, Uebet Angel, a Zimbabwean ambassador to a number of foreign missions. Angel is recorded saying he uses the diplomatic bag to move the gold around. Of concern here is that two people, as you maybe, because I don't have the time to read this particular article in full, you should actually grab a copy if really it flows you to, or you bought to read it, so that you can get all this that is talking about regulating the church. Just to put it into perspective, I've just read as, someone may say I've taken just a text out of context, but you should read in its entirety so that you can get an understanding. But basically, it's just to streamline what we are talking here and why we should. Going back to what the Daily Nation is saying, the exhumation of 18 more bodies bring the total in a horrific religious cult in Kilifi County to 39, a grim manifestation of evil. The head of this cult reportedly encourages followers to fast to death, promising them that their reward will be meeting with Jesus. And as more bodies are found, the suspect is again in police custody, but the investigators must now get to the bottom of this macabre story. Security agencies have let down the families of the victims who were lured, brainwashed, and led to their deaths. So where should we really draw the line? Because now when we bring in government, we'll say this is an infiltration into the spaces of faith practices and religious, expressions in this country. When we talk about the freedom of worship, how then do you regulate a freedom of worship and still it's a right in the Constitution? Because now that one really seems to be, belying what we have in the Constitution. If we say the Religious Act should be strictly streamlined, pastors should have degrees, pastors should have diplomas. Where do we, because this is a very murky area now for me, I know on how to handle this. But we can begin on the literacy bit that I'd promised we circle back with.
The first step is literacy. And of course, if you look at the history of education in Kenya, it was brought by the missionaries, very largely. So the religious practices that are predominant in Kenya are foreign, and they came with missionaries. And if you look at our education system, over time we've sustained the curriculum on religion over time. Islamic religious education for Muslims and Christian religious education for Christians. And when I did some audit on this table, at least each one of us studied theory up to Form 4 and was examined at that level. And when you look at the development of theology teaching in Kenya, I think is one of the few countries in the world that has that has developed so much. We have, I was looking at Catholic University for East Africa, is a well-grounded university here in Kenya, St. Paul's University, Kenya Islands Bible College, Paraton University. You can go on and on, even Islamic universities. So we are not short of personnel to deal with matters of theology and divinity in whichever way. And in any case, if you look at how we even treat religion in this country, we respect Eid al-Fitr of the Muslim faith, and Christian days are also respected by the entire nation. So I don't think this is a country that is handicapped. And when we talk of freedom of religion has limitations. In a religious activity that is a group that threatens life or that engages in activities that are more or less criminal, I think that is a cult and it should be treated as such. That is what we need to do, and that one doesn't need the permission of the churches for government to enforce. It's a business of government to deal with these emerging groups. I was seeing yesterday in the social media a facility in the US that has been established for people who want to commit suicide. You get into the room, it's like a hotel room, there's a noose. If you want to commit suicide, there's a gun, there's a pistol, there are knives, and this is a very strange development. Yes, we'll share. It is there. And there are strange things emerging globally. We've seen even in the social media, new churches where caning is administered, and the pastor of the church is administering canes on the faithfuls, or where a pastor is touching the private parts of women in the name of prayers. These are wrong things that we should not, and we don't need to condone this and even think twice about them. And this is where regulations come in, and beyond regulation, legislation also. And sometimes, for common sense, you don't even need regulation and legislation. What is the purpose of religion? To preserve life. If a religion is threatening life or is getting out of the ethical norms, because we are a society with a culture. We have our own national culture that we have developed, derived from the various cultural practices of the different communities and also the religions that we practice. So anything that is out of the norm is wrong. And it is wrong even in the provisions of the law. And that must be dealt with. So I don't think this is an item to discuss. The issue is, it has come a time that now we audit the churches that exist. And those which manifest as cults should be dealt with criminally as such. Like what we have, the Mackenzie Church in Kilifi, and there are many others. Even those calling themselves Jesus. You see, if somebody is coming and is calling himself Jesus and a modern day Messiah in some village in this country. There was another cult somewhere in Joro where people are told now these members of that church, the world is now coming to an end. So sell everything.
If there's such a proclamation, what should the government do?
Those are wrong
if someone
things.
comes and says Jesus,
they should be dealt with criminally.
That is still a freedom of worship.
No.
I'm just asking because there was Tongaren and we have headlines.
The limits of freedom.
The limits of freedom.
Freedom does not mean
where does it?
You are even free to murder.
First of all, it should be wrong for you to just wake up and tell us you're Jesus. You should be jailed just for that, by the way, because you're not, and we know you're not. Do you know it's only in the Christian...
you never jail Jehovah.
No. It's only in the Christian community where we joke with our Bible, with God, with Jesus. Try and call it Allah, and you see how they will deal with you brutally, there and there, on the spot. We are joking with the religion. That's how our children are just running away from religion, because they see we are jokers. And they will even ask you, when you've left them to leave the Bible, now they will think this human being has become. No. For me, I find it very wrong. And that is why the religious leaders must come out and protect their own. Right. If they can't, we will do it for them. We are also Christians. And we are tired of people joking with the Bible, joking with Jesus. Jesus is not to be joked to. No. Dibal, no. we are in a wrong territory. We are joking with our own lives, with our children's lives. And the day they will tell you, Mom, I don't feel like doing this, it will be okay because they will give you reasons. Because we have never showed them why there was a reason, why from before Christ and after Christ, why we had a Bible, why there were 10 commandments, what were they meant for? It's like we've just left them now to run their lives and they are wondering, where are we headed? That's why we are finding our kids in a lot of challenges.
Even as we bring it to a close. Sorry?
If you didn't know, most churches that exist in this country exist because they have been given some authority to operate. The Register of Societies registers churches.
Indeed.
And you cannot open a bank account unless you have been registered. So already there is some mechanism of regulation on churches. A number of these mainstream churches, if you didn't know, are actually audited by KRA, visits them and looks at their documents, how they are paying taxes and the like. So about 95% of the churches are doing the right thing. But there's like 5%, just like in Islam, where when you speak to true Muslims, Islam is a good religion. It talks about brotherhood, love, everything. But then there is a small section that misinterpret the teachings of the Quran. And those are the ones that try to spoil the name of the Islamic faith. So the same thing within the Christian church. 95% of the churches are okay. They have very good structure. They teach their leaders how to read the Bible, to interpret the Bible. You will never hear them condemning people who want to go and seek medical help in hospitals. In fact, both the Anglican Church, the PCA, the Catholic Church, the SDA, they run medical facilities in the city. The SDA Church has the best dental clinic at Milimani. The eye clinic in Kikuyu, run by PCA, is one of the best in the country. So the problem is leaving these other cults, to run the business the way they know how. It's not that they are using the Bible; they're just doing the wrong thing and taking advantage of the many Kenyans who are suffering because of the bad economic situation in the country. These are the ones debar. We need to push the government to find a way of regulating them. As I told you, if you go to the Catholic Church, there is a way they train a father up to graduation, and then they release the priest to society. Well trained. What the government was proposing is, if you have a PCA church, you come with a curriculum as a church. And that curriculum is what you use to train your potential pastors. They go through the curriculum up to graduation, they are given certificate, then they are registered. They are not. The government wants to know who is this person that is shepherding people in Kibera, people in Kilifi, so that there is some form of watch and as the song is putting it, order in the way the church is being run. But what we have, if maybe you ask the county commissioner Kilifi whether the government knew the operations of this cult that has killed 29 people, maybe the government does not know. And that's where there is a disconnect. We need to have a legal framework in place whereby you know which church is registered and what is it doing. I don't think the main churches will have any objection. You are not going to tell them you are not going to operate. You just want to put in place a mechanism where you know who is doing what. As Mheshimiwa is saying, if we continue this way, we will find ourselves in what is happening in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
I've gone to a church in Europe and you struggle to fill the church. The people in charge are retirees. You find 65-year-olds. The youth have shunned. Yeah. They have totally shunned the church. They don't go to church. In fact, I think the campaign now is to take people from Africa to go and head the church in the West. Yeah, that's what's happening. So what we are simply telling the government is, please, there is a problem And we need the government to look for mechanisms of solving this problem. And the best way, as Mheshimiwa has put it, is to have a self-regulation mechanism.
Right.
Let the church be brought in. Let them be part of the people that will generate the regulations themselves. Let it come from the church. Then the government will enrich it. Let it come to parliament if we need to enrich it. Then we can have some order in this sector. The church, you cannot downplay the good role that
the church
is
very
playing.
pivotal.
So we
Yeah.
are not going to make any statement here that is saying that we want to do away with the church. Never. We can never say that.
Of course you can't.
We can never say that. We want.
Yeah.
We are all Christians. Personally, as I've told you, I was in church the whole weekend. We attend church every day, and at times you leave there inspired, even when you are very discouraged. So they are doing good work.
We can also underestimate, of course, also the role of a leader in the church as well. We saw with COVID-19 and what it did in Tanzania. And the president himself was categorical that we're not going to administer all these vaccines, and we'll continue to pray. And what really happened, even for, to the president himself, COVID took him away. Science, church, we can see also what is happening with the Anglican Church regarding over the same-sex marriage still in the daily nation. So even as the church is not really seeing eye to eye on so many issues because people interpret the Bible differently. I'm still harking back to the same curricula. Do we need maybe to expand from our formative years, the lower primary, because we have this religious studies as well, Islamic, with Christian. I don't know if they'll accommodate other religions as well. But from that perspective, we need to broaden in light of what this is, because this is an eye-opening. It's not the first time we're seeing this. As I've mentioned, John Pesa, I think even still, early 2000 was still in the news, chaining the ladies, in the churches, locking them up. But still the government did do nothing. He was locked up, released again. I think this year we were talking about John Pesa himself, still locking now people who are mentally challenged and praying for them. I think all these incidences, and the Tongaren that you mentioned, all these incidences, a lawyer like you, if you can go back to, was it in 2016, was it Paul? If you may remember Paul, who I think also died by suicide, and gave out all his wealth, the family, you remember that story? And it was all pegged to what? And it was a huge story which was doing mainstream in the media. It was still a matter of religion. Paul of Ifem. What was the?
They used to live in Waithaka.
Yes.
Yes.
Ifem,
where they took everything and took to church and and not just him. Many other people have done that. Families have just taken their things, taken to church, remained poverty, and the pastor moves on, and the family just goes like
and the
that.
Women, yeah.
But you see, Kilifi must tell me at 39 bodies, 39.
And still counting because.
And they are still counting.
Yes.
And we as government want to take this as what? This is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This.
Mgatara, as we're winding up on this briefly.
On this one, I think I've said my bit. I think we need to agree that there are thugs in this area of religion. Talking about that documentary that you started this conversation with. I watched that documentary, the Al Jazeera documentary, about Kamlesh and those people who are hiding under religion.
Yes.
To do their own things. So we have to agree that within the church there are bad elements. And just like within the legal profession, the medical profession, and all other areas, there are very many good people and then there are bad people. But like I have said before, it will be a good step. You see, when something like this happens, people are asking, where's the government? It would be a good thing for the minister in charge to set up a working group, to bring up the team to come up with proposed self-regulation laws and rules, and then they can be brought to the House, to Parliament. Parliament can examine them. It goes to public participation. Then it comes back to the House for laws to be done. What is clearly criminal should be dealt with in the manner that it should. But for now, going long term, I think something needs to be done. And I pray that as Kindiki goes to Kilifi, we are told on Tuesday, that is tomorrow, he will announce something to show that the government is in charge. Because people are asking, where is government? And he has to make a statement that creates a way forward. And for me, that's the way forward.
Mm-hmm. So, under which ministry does it really fall? Still Minister of Interior?
For me,
when it comes to this regulation,
for me,
is it under?
For me, he is going there as a Minister for Interior because of the debts and whatever. But for me, I think the correct people should be the people of culture, where societies are managed from. The Registrar of Society, where his department reports to. That's where it should be, because they'll be able to engage at a wider section. That's what I think. So that's.
Can you say Registrar of Society is under the Ministry of Interior?
Ministry of Interior.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Registrar of Societies.
The Registrar of Societies within Interior, then that's where the conversation should begin. The minister should create a way forward, because if they don't say something, then there's a problem. There's a vacuum, there's a lacuna, and it can lead to despair and very bad results going forward.
Thank you. All right, I want us just to gravitate to this new announcement by the President on all staffs that will be paid 3% of salary to support the affordable housing programs. Employers also to top up on this. Let me just begin with you, Kongo Mogede, because this was a debate that we had, I think, 3 years back, from the Ministry of Housing, and I think it drew a lot of the, should I say, protest and resistance from many Kenyans and employers as well. Why has the President...
Even Sosion.
Even Sosion himself?
Yeah, I remember the teachers.
The teachers, yeah.
I actually...
So that the Sosion is on the other side of the tracks as he changed tone.
I was with the teachers. I was with the teachers.
Yes.
First, we must always connect with the people that we lead. That's very, very important. When you run this race, run it with the people. Already, we are overtaxing Kenyans. We have just forced down the throat another taxation from NSSF. I'm reading in the newspapers today, the county government of Nairobi wants to increase the motor vehicle daily charges from 250 to 650 shillings. Now you want to tell the ECD teacher.
That's 650, is it hourly?
No. Per day.
Per day.
650 per day. You are telling the Mwananchi down there, the ECD teacher, we debated the income of the ECD teacher here, earning 12,000 shillings, okay? And you're telling that ECD teacher, a very clear disconnect that I'm going to again tax you another 3,000 shillings from your salary to build. These people have no food on the table, Diba. You're actually taking away food. I was with some parents yesterday, and they were telling me they have now changed the schedule. Food is eaten twice. You delay breakfast at home, you tell kids end up make the compound, go to the shamba, then you serve them breakfast at 10. Then you deliberately delay lunch. You serve it at 4 because you can only afford 2 meals a day. That is the reality of the kind of difficulties Kenyans are facing. So when you again come up and tell them, you want to again tax them. You remember teachers who earn very well. Sosion will tell you, courtesy of my good friend, Secretary General Sosion, my good friend, opposed this. I was with OU. I don't know if the OU is now the Secretary General. We did a function with him in Nyamira, Ikonge. And I'm telling you, teachers rallied behind and said, when you go to the Senate, tell the Jubilee government we don't want to hear this thing about housing fund. They said a capital, no. And Sossion will confirm to you. So you can't just wake up, Dibal, in a country that has a robust constitution like what we have, where you need to involve Kenyans. You need to have public participation before you take away money from Kenyans. And then introduce this thing in a proper way. And it should be voluntary. How can you force me to give you money for a housing fund the way teachers were asking when they have already built their homes? They say who has told the government that that is their priority. The other day we had His Excellency the President visiting us in Nyamira. And they came and said they want to launch a housing project. Immediately he left, the Nyamira people on us. They're saying you want us to have, who told you we want you to open lodgings for us? What we wanted is an industrial park. We want the president to support the industrial park that was being set up in Nyamira so that our youths can get employment. They said we have our own homes. If the government wants to get support and resonate with the aspirations of the people of Nyamira, they said set up that industrial park. We have already set aside land. Let the government make their contribution. United Nations Industrial Development Bank should support the project. And that's what we want, not this thing of housing. So, I want to appeal to the Uda administration first, not to overtax Kenyans. Number two, if you want to introduce something as radical as this, ensure that there is robust public participation so that there is ownership from Kenyans. Kenyans are not children. You're talking about adults who are earning money. They are earned money. And they know what is their priority. And then finally, this thing cannot be forced down the throat of Kenyans. Let it be voluntary. You cannot force me to buy a house. Maybe I don't want to buy. So anything that is being introduced should be voluntary, Debal.
So we hope that also other stakeholders were enrolled in this. We saw with the NSSF, the Federation of Kenya Employers taking umbrage with that
Let me come in there.
Please.
At some point, I was Assistant Minister in the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Housing, that time it was called. And these ideas have been there before. The question is how to implement them. Remember at that time, we were looking at the urban housing crisis. This is basically Nairobi. And Nairobi is very important to Kenya because it generates 60% of the GDP in this country. Now, but leaders from other parts of the country have also been asking, how can you only be investing, those housing units in the towns, Nairobi and the big towns? Why not extend to other parts of the country? So that's why the idea was, opened up to other areas. But initially, the thinking was, we have a problem here in Nairobi. People don't have houses. We need to help people to get houses, and we need to have low-cost housing. How do we need to do it? We need to the statistics were worked out, and these are the kind of units that we should be developing every year so that people can have adequate housing in Nairobi. But then it was then expanded. So as we are talking about how these processes should take place, let us allow for ideas. I think leadership is about giving ideas. The president has put it out there. The benefit is 700,000 units for civil service, people in the civil service that are going to be developed, and the cost is 4,000 to 15,000. That's about 3% of most civil servant salaries. And you are going to pay this for 15 years. At the end of it, you are guaranteed that you have a house. Because one of the problems of the poverty that people have is that you finish, you are retired as a government officer, you can't pay rent, and then you are forced to go back home, and you can't live in that environment because you are not used to living there. Maybe even you have younger children, and there are all these family complications. People even die early. So I think leadership is about ideas. The idea has been put forward there. As to how it's to be implemented, I think we can have a robust debate around that, because from my understanding, for example, taxation is a function of Parliament. So the executive will come with proposals, then it's Parliament to approve or disapprove them. But the ideas are there. So if the president says, I want to tax 20% so that everyone can save, can have money for education and so on, those are good ideas. Let them be processed through Parliament, because Parliament is the place where these ideas of taxation and whatever are going to be discussed. So if they approve it, fine. But for me, it is an idea. And that idea needs robust
Have we interrogated why in the first place it was shut down when it was proposed from the Ministry of Housing by PSC?
At that time, you know, the same thinking was there, that, you know, the opposition thinking, the people opposed to the idea was that we are overtaxed, therefore we shouldn't do this. It's not a priority. And then they had, you know, they brought in political pressure and the government curved in, yeah, on that idea. But it's an idea that needs to be discussed. And that's about leadership. You don't have to agree with me in everything I say in my leadership. Discuss and give me options.
Right.
The problem with this particular issue is that people are not giving options. They are saying it's bad, let's not tax, and then what? So where are we going with this? So I think it's a good idea, but it needs robust discussion. It's on the table. For me, I think the president needs to bring the proposition to the House for debate. There should be public participation before any form of taxation is done. And if it passes the test, then let's implement it.
Right. Let me rope in Sosion, then I come to Sosion. As you've heard, this should be out of my own volition. It should be really crammed down my throat. But the president has been very categorical. Every civil servant has to pay this 3%.
And I think I'm happy you brought up this item for discussion this morning, because there's a lot of information about housing that is not with Kenyans. And while at Kenya National Union of Teachers, I was privileged to engage and negotiate directly with government on this for purposes of having workers to participate. There's an act of 1967, which of course was envisioned right from independence, that housing was going to be a government program so that workers and Kenyans can access housing over time, of which that law is still in place. Workers are supposed to contribute, but it has not been implemented. The problem with how the housing idea was conceived is what is raising a lot of discussions. I remember I stated very clearly that we want to negotiate and agree on the process of rolling out this housing because it's going to benefit the workers, particularly the main beneficiaries. The primary beneficiaries are the middle class, and the middle class are the workers, who are the people working in Nairobi, who are the people working in Mombasa and in the cities, in towns. They are basically workers who are members of the middle class. And you see many of them are living in slums or poor houses, and when they retire or lose jobs, they don't have homes. Those are obvious facts, and we agreed. There is a lot of sense in implementing the housing program in Kenya. But we asked, how is it going to be implemented so that it benefits all Kenyans? That was one. Two, the sudden deductions from the pay slips of workers without reviewing salaries. And I was very categorical that any deduction, if you want to deduct 3%, then review the CBS at that rate, revise and review the CBS to compensate for the same. And that is a standpoint I had. But in Kenya Kwanza, Dibala, I want us to understand one thing. Kenya Kwanza campaigned on what you call the plan. And the plan had 5 pillars. One is agriculture, MSME, digital superhighway, housing, and health. And when you come to housing, all these pitfalls have been negotiated in a very detailed manner. Number one, the housing shall have to be implemented in all the counties. Because with devolution, counties are functions of development and units of and that is where people anyway are. And at the end of the day, citizens will revert back to their homes once they retire. So if we have these housing projects implemented in all counties, whether it's Mandera, whether it's Wajir, Turkana, unlike what Jubilee had, it wasn't very clear where they were building these houses. But now with the building of these houses in all counties, then it is possible for Kenyans to access decent houses. That's one. Two, in terms of deduction from workers, and of course, we discussed even matters of CBS, that there will be proper negotiations of collective bargaining agreements, and government will respect this. And of course, you cannot expect government to initiate demand for salary. That is to begin with the unions, and that is a different thing. It's a different agenda altogether. Contributing 3% and matching with 3% from the employers and implementing other counties is clear enough, providing equity to all workers and all citizens. Now, the matter is being implemented as a flagship of the government. This item was discussed and was an item
that I agree, but I don't hear from
yes.
you if you are actually agreeing with the 3%. You are just putting around the issue.
No, I'm not skirting. I'm not skirting. Let me be specific. The president. No. I've not changed my position. I have seen within this process, we have seen sanitization and improvement of the process. The president had a meeting with Secretary Generals of unions, and that is common knowledge. And one of the items that was discussed was this one. And it's now being implemented. The housing project is ongoing. It was a commitment to Kenyans. And I can tell you, even I visited Bahamas, and in Bahamas, a teacher entering service is given a house, and you pay for your entire life. So you are entitled to a house. And so it's time in Kenya, we treat housing as a priority issue for workers and the rest of the citizens who can afford. And it is a pillar of Kenya Kwanza. And away from what Jubilee was doing, this is a more orderly arrangement, and it should be implemented. The president has made this pronouncement. It was voted for by Kenyans. And I want to believe election is one of the highest level of public participation. The 5 pillars that the president committed and on which Kenyans voted, one of them is housing. It shall have to implement it. The issue now is how. If there are matters that needs to be discussed through process of public participation, let it be done. And the question of when to do it is not if it is going to be done. And what Mogen is talking about, making it very optional, I don't think in terms of social solidarity, issues of social solidarity, like health insurance, that are often made very compulsory, like housing, if you want to come up with good housing structure and framework as a country, it will not be given as an option. Matters of social solidarity are often made compulsory. But so the housing will be compulsory for it to work.
It will be
and
compulsory,
it has to be delivered.
But
through the process of public participation, how? What is the employer going to to contribute? What is a worker going to
allow
contribute?
Me just to button. Thank you. Let me hear from.
Look at negotiation of CBS. That's a fact. But politicizing it in the manner it's taking is not right.
Let's take, for instance, that we have Honorable Elachi, who now she has a home, and then you're trying to tell her that now I need to contribute 3%.
There is an Elachi of tomorrow will not have a home.
No. She has a home.
There will be a teacher of tomorrow who will enter service without a house.
Okay, let me just let her. You defend yourself.
That's a fact.
I mean, so you see, one of the things we appreciate from Kibaki's time is that whenever a government comes in, you must take over and finalize projects that were there. So I appreciate that. But then also, I would wish now that the government will understand that we have come from COVID, that 2 years across global, everything closed. And this is one thing now our government must start appreciating, that it is not the wish of Kenyans to find themselves in the lives they are in. It was because of COVID. And so what is your plan post-COVID? Yes, we have the projects, they must be done, but there must be a way of now giving Kenyans also, again, a plan that we are coming out of COVID, and this is post-COVID. All these challenges we are going through are because of COVID, and we must appreciate that. And so when you come and we continue with the housing, which we have to, then there must be a different way of doing it. Either the way we do it in mortgage, let Kenyans just put them into mortgage then, and say the same way I'll go to Parliament, I'm supposed to have a mortgage which I'm already paying that mortgage for the next 4 years. I must clear my mortgage. You see, you can't put me now into this 3%. And so you must cluster. For those who are unpensionable and whatever, put them onto this program. They will say, those who want to be part of it, and by the way, in the affordable housing that was started, you find that we have Kenyans who, for them, they will buy even 5 or 6 units. Like the first ones that were done in Nairobi, you find other people with 7, 9 units. So we also need to ask ourselves, as we go into this, how have you restructured so that one Kenyan does not walk in Karioko and just buy 10 units, 11 units to sell? Then that is not affordable. Then there is no need of this 3%. So they must restructure the program and put in very clear mechanisms that if we are doing on this, then let Kenyans, all of them, be able. But you see, as the contractor who is constructing these houses also, you cannot try him on this, because you see he's spending money and it's not government money. So there are those who have decided they will go private, just the way we have expressway. If we have houses like those ones, you have to allow that contractor to sell his houses based on the need. If someone comes and buys 10, fine. But the ones that are strictly for government, that you want to say now each county has, these are government units, then those are the ones you take through this process. So in Nairobi, I will tell you for free, we have very many people, they'll just buy. Like we buy off-plan. I mean, people start buying off-plan depending on the area. So there are areas that are very, very high-end that will go very fast. So if you are starting a program of affordable housing, for example, in Woodley, trust me, they will not. They will go on off-plan. The same way in Karioko right now, they will go on off-plan.
You still not told me, if you have the house, will you really go for this option? And if it's being
well, my children will go, because maybe they are already, some of them working, so they'll have to go. But I've just said, let the government look at it from a post-COVID policy, where you caution, because Kenyans are struggling.
Thank you.
Even in that 3%, they don't have. If you tell them what is the priority, most of them will tell you, my priority is my children to go to school.
All right.
And find school fees.
So we need to make it very categorical then. Why did the government also come up with the idea of a Kenya refinancing mortgage company? And how does it fit in also with the 3%? So we have the refinancing mortgaging company. We have the 3% that will be now deducted from the workers as well. Can we get clarity on this too?
The refinancing of mortgages, it comes when people try to. There's the primary company that gives the mortgage, and then those companies have a back support. So in case they're having issues in terms of cash flow, whatever, the back company, that is the mortgage refinance companies, will be the one that backs up, and that's the one that government will have a stake in, so that we stabilize the mortgage.
Where is the money coming from government for the refinancing of that?
It's obviously treasury bills, treasury bonds. The government will back up so that we don't have a failure of the market. It's critical for stability of the economy. But I wanted to say this again. You cannot have a successful low-cost housing when you make it optional. When you say I have a house, so let us not deduct the 3%, then nobody will agree to be deducted. Just like the way Mheshimiwa Sosion was arguing, when you come to insurance on the road, for example, road insurance, it is compulsory. You cannot argue that, I don't need to take insurance because I have enough money. In case of any accident, I will take care of it from my personal account. It is compulsory, and that's why insurance is working. So same for housing. For it to work, we have to agree as a nation. We have to all, whether you have a house, you don't have a house, it's something for all of us. That is how it's going to have to work. That's why I'm saying this is leadership. You have put an idea on the table. But again, the executive doesn't have power to tax. Powers of taxation are in the House. So they will have to bring those proposals on the table of Parliament. Parliament will discuss, and in the discussions, there will be those who will say, we don't agree, you are overtaxing. There will be those who will say, we need to bite the bullet, we have a problem. Let us go ahead and sacrifice for the sake of the future of this country. So then there will be the public participation in this whole debate, and then the law will be passed if it is passed, or the law will be rejected if they don't have the correct persuasion and the numbers. So for me, I think we must agree that this is a good idea. If you're going to have 700,000 civil servants having houses, that is a very good idea. Because I remember when we were younger, my father was working in Mombasa. He first worked for the government and then went to work in the private sector. In the government, we were living in a government housing. With the salary my father was getting at the time, if he was to rent, we would be living very far inside of Mombasa. But the government had built housing, had provided housing for its staff. So he was able to access work in time and stuff like that. Then when he went to the private sector, it was a big company which was also giving staff housing. But somewhere along the way, companies came and changed this idea. They said, it is not the prime thing why we exist. We are existing to do business. So we will give you money, go and look for your own houses. And that has been the trend going forward, that this is not our this is not our core business. Most private companies are saying, this is not our core business. We will give you money, you negotiate it in your package and go and do what you need to do. Even the government has moved to that our core business is not to house you. We'll give you a housing allowance, go and sort yourself. But over time, it has not worked. Most people pick that house allowance, they will go to the market, and it's not enough to give them a decent housing. That's why now there's this shift. And this idea was there when Kibaki was in power. Now William Ruto is there. He has tried to bring it again. And during Uhuru's time, they had also this thing about urban housing and how we need to come up with cheaper units. What William Ruto is doing, he's trying to make this policy to work, And it may be bitter, but at the end of it, we have to agree. It used to work better when we used to house our people. But then in those days, they were just staff housing in those olden days. What we need to do is to make the staff to own those houses. Big companies have a responsibilities. Government has a responsibility. And normally when government starts, companies follow, because government sets up the pace. So I think this is an idea we should not just politicize it. We say, oh, this is too much, and then we forget about this, throw away the water and the baby. Let us discuss it. And let us agree. If it is doable, we do it. If it is not, then let us give the alternative. We don't just say it's a bad idea and we leave it there. And the other thing, government policies that are beneficial, many times they may not be popular, but over time they make sense. So let's not throw away the thing and do politics around it. Let's look at it. Does it make sense? What are the benefits? Can we afford it?
Thank you.
Is the process correct?
Thank you.
And if it is,
let me
let's move it. Let's implement it.
Briefly, I'll be winding up.
What is being put on the table? And I sympathize this morning with my friend here, my neighbor, because
of time, we need to be winding up.
He's struggling either to speak from the heart or to please his boss. You know, now he's here as government. Because he articulated this matter very well. You cannot compare NHIF with this fund. NHIF, you pay to benefit. A benefit accrues from it. You cannot tell the ECD teacher who has no guarantee that she's going to benefit from that housing project to contribute 3% of her income. It's not possible. Because when you tell people a social support scheme like NSSF, it's my money I'm saving, I'll get it when I retire. When you force me to contribute to NHIF, I'll walk to a hospital with that card and I benefit. But the issues that were on the table last time, which are still on the table, is you cannot force me to make a contribution, yet I'm not going to be a beneficiary. You are telling me, Dibal, contribute 3% of your income, we'll use it to, you are telling me I'm saving money, but I'm not saving it because you will use my money to allow somebody elsewhere to buy the house. So this scheme can only be voluntary. Those who want to benefit from the scheme can be told, join the scheme, make a contribution. There is no country in the world that forces people to take mortgages. There is none, Tibal. Because the income are also not the same. There are people, as Mheshimiwa has put it, who will never think about housing. They are comfortable in their rural areas. They want to see their children through to school and put food on the table. Even insurance. Government vehicles don't take insurance, Dibal. Because the government says we don't need the cover. We have the money. If our vehicles get involved in accidents, we can repair them. If we are sued, we cause an accident, we have the money. So they don't need to take insurance. But Omogeni and Sosion, because we are not, nobody knows our known source of income, you are forced to take insurance. So in case you cause an accident, somebody can get compensated by the insurance companies. Tractors in our farms don't take insurance. Those are exemptions. So even for this one, let the government not use this as a scheme. What the Wood administration is looking for is money. Because the government has spent all the money to pay people, don't want to mention. Now what they want to do is to look for another form of taxation. You have heard the word on the table this morning is taxation. You want to introduce another form of taxation on Kenyans through the back door so that the government can get money. You live in Kenya. Last month, civil servants did not earn their salary on time. Counties, 4 months down the line, they have not earned salaries. Look at the back of the Daily Nation. Workers are saying we are going to down our tools if April pay comes late again. So it's just a way of mopping up funds from
we need to wind up.
Vulnerable Kenyans.
Thank you.
Vulnerable Kenyans. And I'm telling you, Dibal, this is something as leaders in this country we will not allow. If this scheme is to be introduced, let it be introduced, but let it be voluntary.
Thank you. Right. So I won't allow it because of time. I'm being hounded out of studio. I don't have time because it would be unfair for other panelists as well. So I think we just wind it up on that particular note. But the other issue that we'll approach was the tenant purchase model. Should that be the way maybe you should have taken? If I'm interested to actually own a house, I have the tenant purchase model instead of taxing my salary. Yeah, myself, I'm paying through tenancy, but of course I know I'll own this house at the end of my working career. That should be another question. So I can't allow you. I'm saying it's actually past time. Right, thank you very much. I think we can pick it up next week, gentlemen and lady, if we allow me. Just to wind it up, thank you very much for your contribution this morning. Danso Mugatana, Senator Tana River, I really appreciate. Beatrice Elachi, thank you so much. Member of Parliament of Dagoretti North, Sosion, CS Tourism, thank you. And also Senator of Nyamira, Congo Omogoni, thank you, Senior Council. I really appreciate. Thank you for your valued company. You've been watching Standpoint. Sports Chat is up next.